You're watching the 3 News Hurricane Special, sponsored by AEP Texas.
Hello and welcome to the 2026 KIII Hurricane Special. I'm Chief Meteorologist Carly Smith.
And I'm meteorologist Hope Boland.
And I'm meteorologist Kellyanne Class. As we gear up for another hurricane season, our mission is to be a reliable source for relevant, timely, and accurate information, all with a focus on the coastal bend.
Yeah, in past years, we've seen several major projects across the coastal bend come to completion. The new harbor bridge opened and fishing is back on Bob Hall Pier. We find out how these structures are built to withstand hurricanes.
Nearly 9 years later, disaster recovery efforts continue in Rockport and Port Aransas following Hurricane Harvey. As we take a look at how the area has recovered, it's also important to be prepared. This special is a starting point on what you need to do in order to be ready for the upcoming hurricane season.
Atlantic hurricane season starts June 1st and ends November 30th. Activity tends to pick up around mid-August and peaks in September. The shallow waters of the Gulf heat up quicker than the deeper waters of the Atlantic. This means activity can pop up earlier in June and July. By August and September, the open Atlantic waters are warm enough to support the development of tropical waves moving off the west coast of Africa. Now, water temperatures play a key role in both the Pacific as well as the Atlantic Ocean when we talk about tropical development.
It's the sea surface temperatures in the equatorial region of the Pacific that determine the phase of the El Niño Southern Oscillation. If the waters here are cooler than normal, we have La Niña. If the waters are warmer than average, it's El Niño.
This year we are expecting El Nino, and you may have heard the term Super El Nino. I talked with Dr. Phil Klotzbach, a hurricane forecast expert from Colorado State University, about what a Super El Nino could mean for the Texas coastline.
Usually they're referring to a super El Nino as like 2 degrees Celsius or like 3 degrees Fahrenheit. So these aren't huge temperature changes, but small temperature changes in the tropics make big differences in how the atmosphere responds.
Since 1950, there has not been a landfalling hurricane in Texas during an El Nino year. This is likely due to an increase in wind shear. When wind shear is present, it tilts the storm and makes it more difficult to get rid of the used air. It's harder for the storm to strengthen and organize.
El Nino is expected to strengthen throughout hurricane season with a greater impact on the second half. So in the early months, the Texas coast could be vulnerable due to the warm water.
Your landfalls in Texas tend to occur earlier in the season. October, November, the odds of landfall in Texas go way down. You tend to get a little too much shear down here.
Our 2026 KIII hurricane forecast calls for 13 to 16 named storms, 4 to 6 of those reaching hurricane status, and 1 to 3 major hurricanes with peak winds above 110 miles per hour. The Atlantic Basin on average has 14 named storms, 7 hurricanes, and 3 major hurricanes each year.
It's worth noting that while we usually see below average activity during an El Nino, the warmer Atlantic sea surface temperatures heading into May is why our forecast is just above normal.
Yeah, in 2023, we transitioned into a very strong El Nino, but with the help of warmer than normal sea surface temperatures, we ended up seeing 19 named storms, 12 of which never reached hurricane status, likely due to El Nino's wind shear.
Preseason forecasts can help us gauge how active it may be, but it can't tell us where, when, how strong, or what specific threats any given location may or may not see.
The main threats a hurricane can bring include a storm surge, high surf, rip currents, flooding, tornadoes, and destructive wind. The Saffir-Simpson Hurricane Wind Scale only takes wind speed into account when determining the strength. Tropical storms have wind speeds between 39 and 73 miles per hour. Hurricanes reach speeds of at least 74 miles per hour and are rated Category 1 through Category 5. It's a great tool to determine a storm's strength, but it does not paint the entire picture. Tropical systems are extremely nuanced and entail many more threats than just wind.
Hurricane names are given once the wind reaches tropical storm strength, and there are 6 lists of names that rotate through every 6 years.
In the event a storm becomes excessively deadly or damaging, the name is retired and a new name replaces it 6 years later. Melissa was retired last year, and Molly will replace it in 2031.
Melissa was a Category 5 hurricane with sustained winds of 190 miles per hour. It tied Hurricane Allen of 1980 for the strongest sustained winds.
This year's list is the same one we saw in the historic 2020 hurricane season. The only new name on the list is Leah, which replaced Laura. The 2020 season also saw the retirement of the entire Greek alphabet.
Hannah is on this year's list. That might have caught your attention because 6 years ago, a Category 1 Hurricane Hannah made landfall about 10 miles north of Port Mansfield. That position pushed large waves and 5.5-foot storm surge onto Padre Island. The end of Bob Hall Pier collapsed. And this year, it was finally rebuilt and reopened to the public on February 24th. I caught up with Scott Cross to talk about how the new Bob Hall Pier was built to withstand stronger storms.
And it's not about wind speed for me, it's about storm surge and wave height and all that energy.
All of those factors play a role in how Director Scott Cross prepares Nueces County coastal parks for hurricane season.
I was actually in the EOC and somebody called me and said the pier had collapsed. And I said, no way.
Wave heights of 20 feet were breaking over the 16-foot pier.
So those waves were really pounding very hard on the top of that pier. And you're dealing with 1981, 1982 concrete construction, materials back then versus what we have now.
Now the pier is 3 feet taller and supported with steel piles.
It's built a lot stronger and a lot tougher to mitigate that kind of storm surge if we ever get that again.
Tell us about this specific design and how that's going to help us during hurricane season.
The design is for it to blow out. When the waves hit underneath, it'll push these panels out.
And on the previous pier and on the current Horace Caldwell Pier, those panels were made of concrete.
And on their way down, they do more damage than these ever will do. We'll recover these if we can. If not, we can build additional ones.
The support piles, 24 inches in diameter, and the piles at the end, even bigger.
I mean, look at those piles. Those are 48 inches.
Yeah.
And
how big were the old ones?
18.
Wow.
That's a huge difference.
That's huge. Holding up that diamond-shaped T-head.
Think about the bow of a boat breaking through the water. Same kind of concept here.
A design built to withstand storm surge.
This pier will be here well over 100 years, the way we have it designed, as far as its lifespan. Now, you don't confuse that with a 500-year storm.
Right.
Yeah. So, but this pier is built to last 100 years.
A determining factor in the severity of hazards we see, like surge, is location relative to the storm. Stronger impacts are usually felt on the right side of a hurricane, specifically in the right front quadrant. Right side doesn't mean the eastern side of the storm. It means the side to the right of the storm's motion. This is typically where the worst of the wind and surge occur due to the additive properties of the storm's motion and rotation.
Hurricane Hannah hit south of Corpus Christi, and the storm surge was strong enough to take out Bob Hall Pier. Meanwhile, just about 20 miles up the coast, in Port Aransas, Horace Caldwell Pier survived. Both piers were identical and opened in 1983. Horace Caldwell Pier also survived Hurricane Harvey in 2017.
Hurricane Harvey made landfall as a Category 4 on San Jose Island, just north of Port Aransas. Rockport was hit the hardest, with wind gusts topping 150 miles per hour. Because of the storm's landfall location, Corpus Christi only saw Category 1 strength gusts. Also on the left side, but much closer to the eye, was Port Aransas, a coastal town that is still recovering from the impacts.
A creepy, eerie feeling because you knew there was no power, no water, no cell service, and really no sign of life on such a vibrant town and city, which was just devastating. But I knew it was going to be really difficult to rebuild for a while.
According to Mayor Moore, roughly 80% of city-owned buildings were destroyed during Hurricane Harvey.
There were definitely a lot of buildings that were built in the 60s, 70s, and 80s that didn't have to meet the current windstorm requirements.
Storm surge, another key player in destruction, affected many older buildings as well. This was the case for the public safety building that was built under early floodplain requirements in the mid-90s.
It took on a significant amount of water. Looked like about 2 feet of storm surge was all through the building. We had the ceiling collapse or roof collapse in a couple of sections of the building. Part of the actual building had separated from the back wall had separated from a sidewall on the exterior of the building, so it sustained significant damage.
After the storm, rebuilding began, but first responders still had to operate out of temporary structures for roughly 9 years. For the police department, that ended this year when the public safety building became operational. Now one of the highest points in the city, the public safety building was designed to be stronger and more storm ready, capable of withstanding up to 14 inches of storm surge flooding.
It will allow us to protect our people, to be able to hunker down during the storm, but then be able to immediately, once it passes, start responding and being able to go through the recovery efforts.
While recovery efforts continue, the mayor says Port Aransas will be ready if another storm threatens the coast.
I pray that if something does come, we as a city overall, both residents and commercial buildings, will withstand things better. And that's what you learn from a lesson like that, Harvey.
Port Aransas was on the left side of the storm, but water was still pushed across Corpus Christi Bay, bringing 8 feet of storm surge to parts of the city.
Yeah, storm surge is one of the most important reasons to evacuate when a storm threatens the coast.
When we come back, we take a look at evacuation routes and how the new harbor bridge is built to handle strong winds. When it comes to evacuating, many people think of I-37 first, but that's not the only way out. Another option to head north is US Highway 181. This evacuation route takes you 205 feet above the water over the new harbor bridge. This engineering feat of cables and concrete supports a main span longer than 5 football fields. We learn why this design was chosen for Corpus Christi and how the harbor bridge is built to keep the region connected for 170 years to come. It's the tallest structure in South Texas and the longest cable-stayed bridge in the United States. The new harbor bridge, built to withstand extreme weather events, including the direct impact of a hurricane. Lynn Allison, Public Information Coordinator for the new harbor bridge project, tells me extreme analysis and wind testing was done on the bridge with over 300,000 storm simulations.
The simulations that were done and models that were tested were done in a way that exceeded any recorded wind event in the Gulf Coast, and that's the whole Gulf, right? From Florida to Texas.
This type of bridge was specifically chosen as the design because of its defense against wind events.
TxDOT decided on a design as the cable stay bridge, which is known for surviving and being built for wind type events. It's more of like a palm tree versus the oak tree that we had before. And it's a much longer and taller bridge, so it had to be a different design to accommodate those measurements.
The design and latest technology allows for real-time data to be fed from the bridge directly to TxDOT, so they can monitor the current conditions of the bridge, which is important for inspections.
Inspection is going to be continuous. There's opportunities for the state to get real-time monitoring. Each cable is built with its own device for that monitoring. There will actually be cameras in place with like camera feeds, so all of that can be monitored by the state and dispatched for inspection as necessary.
As you're keeping an eye on a storm's forecast path to plan an evacuation route, remember that tropical hazards can and often do extend beyond the cone. Make sure you're moving inland, but also in the opposite direction of the storm's impact. There are many evacuation routes within the coastal bend. I-37 and Highway 181 is not your only option. Evacuation traffic typically moves below the speed limit, so give yourself more time than you think you'll need to leave the area.
It's important to know which evacuation zone you live in now, so you're prepared ahead of time. Corpus Christi is broken up into 5 evacuation zones determined by the threat of storm surge and wind in each of those areas: A1, A2, A3, B, and C. Places like the Island, North Beach, Flower Bluff, and around Oso Creek are the lowest lying areas in Corpus Christi, meaning they are the most susceptible to storm surge. These are the A evacuation zones, which are typically evacuated first.
Corpus Christi residents without a car can still evacuate with the help of Corpus Christi Regional Transportation Authority. Just head to the nearest bus stop and you'll be driven to the closest evacuation center. From there, buses will evacuate residents to an inland city like San Antonio. You can bring your pets, but you must bring a leash, crate, and any other necessary items. For those with disabilities or other needs, call 211 or visit tdem.texas.gov to sign up for the State of Texas Assistant Registry.
Evacuation information will be relayed through local media and the reverse alert system. This is the quickest way to get updates directly from the city. You can elect to receive alerts through text, phone call, or email. Just visit reversealert.org or text Be Ready CCNC to 888-777 to enroll.
The forecast cone is once again getting smaller and more accurate for the center of the storm. Forecast cones in 2026 will be 4 to 8% smaller than they were in 2025. The largest decrease will be at 48 to 60 hours out. NHC forecasters can also adjust the size of the cone based on their confidence in the forecast.
Remember, the size of the storm is not considered, which is why impacts can, and often do, extend beyond the cone. This is why it's crucial to pay attention to tropical watches and warnings that are issued. That's the second and more visible update this year. Forecast cones from the NHC will now include inland tropical watches and warnings, in addition to coastal watches and warnings. The reason for this is to further emphasize and better communicate that tropical hazards can reach outside of the forecast cone. At KIII, we already showed inland watches and warnings, so even though the Hurricane Center's products may look a little different this season, ours will not.
Again, we can't emphasize this enough. Tropical impacts happen outside of the forecast cone.
Coming up after the break, we talk about those threats
and how you can start preparing your home now. Well, before we see any rain or storm surge, one of the first hazards we'll see, even if a storm is on the other side of the Gulf, are rip currents. As waves get bigger and the wave period between waves gets longer, the amount of water pushed onshore increases. Rip currents form as a way to take this water back out to the sea. Rip currents commonly form in sandbar breaks and near piers and jetties.
Earlier, we discussed the power of water when large waves and storm surge took out Bob Hall Pier. Storm surge is not the only way flooding happens during a tropical system. Flooding can happen from high rainfall rates during tropical waves, tropical depressions, tropical storms, and hurricanes.
Like we saw with Hurricane Harvey as it moved over Houston, flooding can easily occur if a band sits over an area for a long time or if the storm itself stalls. Excessive rainfall events are not confined to any coastal area. In fact, in 2024, Hurricane Helene made landfall in the Big Bend area of Florida as a Category 4 hurricane. It continued northward, dumping up to 30 inches of rain over parts of the mountains of North Carolina. Entire communities were swept off the map due to the flooding. Mudslides and other collapsed roads cut out entire towns from the rest of the state. This all happened hundreds of miles away from the Atlantic coast. Helene was the deadliest United States hurricane since Katrina, with over 250 reported deaths.
Tornadoes are another threat that can cover territory well inland. Tornadoes tend to form in the outer rain bands of a storm due to speed shear. This is a specific type of wind shear that occurs when winds aloft are faster than those at the surface. A tube of rotating air is created, which can be tilted vertically and extend to the surface. Tornadoes in tropical systems are usually brief and on the lower end of the enhanced Fujita scale.
Making sure you have a way to receive weather updates on local watches and warnings is one of the most important things you can do to prepare for the upcoming hurricane season. The KIII 3 News app is a great place to start. NOAA weather radios are another option.
Whether a seasonal forecast is active or quiet, your preps for hurricane season should be the same every year because it only takes one to change your life. The best time to prepare is now. Every storm is different and everyone's preparations are also different, even for the same storm. Parents need additional items for kids and pet owners need to be sure they have pet supplies ready to go, but some preparations are universal.
Like having a stocked hurricane kit. Your hurricane kit should include a first aid kit, hand sanitizer, wipes, enough non-perishable food for a few days, 1 gallon of water per person per day, a manual can opener, a flashlight, batteries, chargers for phones, a portable power bank, cash, important documents such as birth certificates and insurance policies, prescription and over-the-counter medications, hygiene products, and extra clothes. This isn't a definitive list of everything needed for your family, but it's a good starting point.
Check to see if anything in your hurricane kit is expired or needs to be replaced. If you have a generator, make sure it works. It's also a good idea to take note of what's in your yard or on your patio that may need to be brought in or anchored down for a storm. Be sure to trim away any dead tree branches on your property because tree limbs can quickly become projectiles in the wind. Also check with family and friends to see if they'll need help with anything heading into the season.
Boarding up is also something you can start preparing now. You can easily measure and pre-cut boards for your windows. You could even label the boards for faster installation. By doing this ahead of time, you won't have to run all over town looking for supplies or stand in long lines when you do need some.
If we expect sustained hurricane-force winds, we suggest boarding up. Wind speeds of 74 miles per hour or greater are strong enough to break windows on their own. There is a gray area that covers tropical storm-force winds because while the winds may not be strong enough to break windows on their own, they are strong enough to toss debris, and that could break your windows. If you rent or live in an apartment, ask your landlord or leasing office if you're responsible for boarding up windows or getting sandbags.
Whether you're a homeowner or a renter, it's a good idea to make sure your insurance policy is up to date.
Yeah, double check your policy's coverage and take photos or videos of your belongings in case you need to file a claim later. That way you have an accurate list of all of your contents.
If you're on the fence about certain types of coverage, remember that once a storm passes the 2080 line in the Gulf, most insurance carriers do not allow their agents to bind new coverage.
When we come back, free resources for you to stay on top of the tropics this season. Welcome back, and thanks for sticking with us through our 2026 Hurricane Special.
A great resource to help you keep updated on what's happening in the tropics is our website.
Specifically, the tropical page. We update it at least twice a day during hurricane season, and if there's something of interest to the coastal bend, it will be updated even more frequently. The tropical page can be found under the Hurricane Central tab of our website, and we also link it in our regular forecast article if something is of interest to our area within the next 7 days. It's a great place to view the most current tropical outlooks and forecasts with a focus on the Texas Gulf Coast.
On top of the latest information, we take the time to explain the why behind the forecast and give our own thoughts on the situation.
You can also find the latest forecast videos, in-depth discussions, and even this hurricane special on our streaming service, 3 News Plus. It's easy to download on your smart TV, Roku, or Fire Stick. And you can even take the latter two with you to keep up with our live coverage if you need to evacuate.
Both 3 News Plus and our website are great free resources to stay on top of the tropics this hurricane season. We highly encourage you to check them out.
Yeah, it's impossible to say when and where a storm may impact months in advance. Regardless of the preseason forecast for this year, it's important to remember it only takes one. Stay safe, stay aware, and stay informed this hurricane season.
You've been watching the 3 News Hurricane Special, sponsored by AEP Texas.